Fight Mike here. Today I'm going to be discussing the fighters that I believe to be not the same guy anymore, sort of on a downfall or a downward spiral. I'm not saying that these are bad fighters at all, and I'm not even saying that they're going to lose their coming fights, but I'm just saying that if you look at them stylistically or how they fight, it just seems to be a step behind what they used to be, or they just may not be having the same pep in their step. They may not be the same level that they used to or have the same attributes that they used to. And I believe that all of these is for the worse of their career. But let's jump in with the first fighter I wanted to talk about, who is Peter Yan. This is going to be interesting just because a lot of people would know that I'm a massive Peter Yan supporter, and they all know that I do love watching Peter Yan, and he fought over the weekend, and he fought very well. But you cannot tell me when you're watching that you thought that that was prime Peter Yan, that you thought that was vintage Peter Yan. His style has shifted noticeably. If you watch that fight, you'll see that he's no longer throwing a lot of volume. He's not layering his strikes with kicks like he used to. His head movement and defense is not as sharp. His footwork looks much, much slower. He's a lot more flat-footed than he ever was throughout his career. And it's just like a massive change. You see the Marcus McGee fights, you see the Song Yadong fights, you see the Davison Figueiredo fights, and he's just not he's just not really throwing the same strikes. He's not really doing the same things that he used to. He used to be the sort of like throw a multiple punch combination, end it with a kick or like a kick to the body, or end it with a high kick, end it with a spinning kick. Like there was a lot of different variation to Peter Yan's strikes. He would throw a lot of spinning back kicks to the body. There was just so much to his games. There were so many wrinkles to his striking, and that's actually what I picked Yan to beat McGee with. I thought he was going to beat him with activities on the kicks, the ending the combinations with kicks, doing more leg kicks, just doing more as a striker, and that's just not what we saw. And we saw even in the Song Yadong fight, we saw a Yan that was more what's the word? He was more able to wrestle. He wasn't really messing with the striking with Yadong. He'd throw a couple of punches and then duck in for a takedown. The thing is that I think it's sort of that Corey Sandhagen situation where at the start of Sandhagen's career on the come up, he looked like an absolute killer. He looked like he was super fast. He was very dynamic. The flying knees were coming out of nowhere. The spinning wheel kick knockouts. He was just looking like a much better striker than he is now. But now that he's been out-grappled by guys like Aljamain Sterling, he was out-grappled by TJ Dillashaw, he was out-grappled by Umar, he's been out-grappled so many times that he's worked so much on it that his striking sort of regressed. And I sort of see the same thing from Yan. I see that after the Merab fight, after getting 50-45 by Merab, he's a lot slower on the feet, he's a lot more flat-footed, he's not moving as much as he used to, he's not throwing long combinations. It's sort of this like over-correction on his striking to sort of negate people's wrestling against him after those fights. If you remember watching Yan on the come-up, he was electrically fast. He was throwing beautiful 5-punch or 4-punch combinations ending with a kick. He was always throwing some dynamic strikes throughout the fight. We're not seeing that same guy anymore. We're seeing a guy who clinches a little bit more. We're seeing a guy who wrestles a little bit more. But we're also seeing someone who's been a lot more hittable. If you remember the Peter Yan in the Aljamain Sterling fights or the Peter Yan in the Corey Sandhagen fights, he would get caught a little bit on the guard, but he would also do a lot of slipping on the inside or outside of a punch and landing with his own. If you're watching that Marcus McGee fight, you would see him getting caught on the guard constantly, being peppered with shots constantly. And we never really saw Yan get hit that much throughout his career. And I know it could be a number of things. I think the movement's partially to do with the knee injury he got against Song Yadong. I think since that fight, he's not been moving backwards too quickly, and that knee injury definitely could be the cause of that. And in the Marcus McGee fight, I was calling it the whole time. I thought he had a foot injury in that fight, just because his corner were icing that foot throughout from the first round of that fight, which could definitely play into a fact why he was kicking a lot less. But we're just seeing a slower Yan. I know that a lot of people are going to completely disagree, saying, bro, vintage Yan with just some new Merab techniques. That was who we saw on the weekend. But no, it's not. He threw like 3 kicks the entire time. No dynamic strikes at all. He would at least throw 1 per fight. At least it would be a spinning wheel kick against someone. It would be a spinning back fist against Corey Sandhagen. There was always something dynamic against these fighters. But Now he's looking a lot slower version of himself. He's doing a lot more boxing, doing a lot more wrestling. I think his fight IQ has gotten better. But there's just a lot of physical attributes that I think are getting worse for PDA. And I think his reaction time's slower. I thought that Marcus McGee was catching him with punches that he wouldn't usually get caught with. And even though he's always going to be very competitive with these guys at the top, I don't think that we're seeing the damaging Petey Yan, the guy that we knew and loved when he was coming up and when he just got the title. He's still a fantastic fighter, but it's definitely a change up of style. Moving on to the next fighter, though, we've got Robert Whitaker. This really hurts me to say. Everyone knows from my accent that I'm from Australia, but I love Robert Whitaker. I've watched every single one of his fights time and time again. I've rewatched all of them recently as well. And the thing is, he's still elite. He's looking very good in a lot of his fights. He looked solid against RDR on the weekend. He beat Costa last year, looking pretty good in that fight. But he's definitely changed up a little bit. When I used to watch Robert Whitaker, he used to have a massive speed advantage over other middleweights. You would look at fights against guys like Darren Till or Kelvin Gastelum, even though they're former welterweights. Whitaker looks like night and day difference in the speed with him, or like a Vittoria or a Cannonier. He looked way faster than them. And even like guys like Yoel Romero, he looked as explosive and as fast as Romero. And the thing is that I'm bringing up the Yoel Romero fight because I think the speed is a big difference between Robert Whitaker's game now from like 2016 to 2018. But the massive difference I see is that there's just way less differentiating from Robert Whitaker's strikes. He's very often doing the same things. He's usually just throwing a 1-2 nowadays. He's not really throwing that much else. When you watch the Yoel Romero fight, you'll see some really lightning fast blitzes in that fight. You'll see some beautiful teep kicks. You'll see constant side kicks. You'll see teeps to the knees of his opponents. You'll see 1-2 head kicks. You'll see body kicks. There's everything. There's elusive movements. Now when I'm watching Robert Whitaker, especially in this RDR fight, the kicks are gone. He threw a couple of leg kicks against Paulo Costa and maybe a leg kick or two against DDP. But where are these teeps? Where are the teeps that he was aggressively throwing against Yoel Romero? Where were the side kicks he was stomping onto Darren Till's knee? Tearing into his ACL, mate. He was just doing all of this stuff that he's not done in the last few years. I'm sorry to just bless your ears with my Darren Till impression. I know no one asked for that, but he just looks completely different. Everyone was talking about the fight against RDR saying, oh, Robert Whitaker's looking exactly the same as he used to. He's doing everything he used to be better. He's got better fight IQ. His takedown defense has got better. I'm like, shut up. Watch Robert Whitaker in 2017 and you'll see it's a completely different fighter. He was aggressively teeping people moving backwards. He was throwing beautiful leaping in 1-2s, and he was just covering distance with that karate-style blitz with absolute ferocity. It was completely different to how he fights now. And I will stand by that. Watch that Gastelum fight back and then play the RDR or play the DDP fight. He doesn't throw any kicks anymore. If you watch the Paulo Costa fight, he repeats this through the Ikram fight. He repeats this through the RDR fight. He's super bladed in his stance now, and he's a lot more flat-footed. He used to be so bouncy on his toes. It used to be devastatingly difficult to hit him. Whereas now he's so much more flat-footed, which makes him more hittable. He doesn't cut the angles like he used to or reset distance the same way after combinations just because he's not got that same footwork. He's a lot more bladed. He's a lot more set in his stance. And although he's still technically brilliant, he's just not fighting with the same intensity or unpredictability. You're seeing the same 1-2 get thrown time and time again from Robert Whitaker. And one last thing about him, and it pains me to say this because I always know that Bobby Knuckles is the warrior that we all know and love, and I still believe he is still a massive warrior. But mentality-wise, I saw a difference in him. He was taking breathers in the clinch against RDR, which the old Rob wouldn't do. You saw the fights against Yoel Romero. He was basically out on his feet, and he was still throwing 1-2 head kicks with full power. It was the Bobby Knuckles we all know and love. And I just couldn't look at the RDR fight and say, oh yeah, this is the same guy. Yeah, he's held up against the cage for 45 seconds, not trying anything, looking at the clock. Yeah, this is the same guy. I'm not doubting it that he's skill-wise the same, but I think we're seeing a different Robert Whitaker when it comes to his his like need to get this done, his need to push through in the fourth round with Yoel Romero whilst he's gassed out and he's beaten to shit. Like it's a different Rob. That Rob back then, he was throwing the aggressive teep kicks, he was throwing the 1-2s, he was throwing the 1-2 head kicks, he was doing so much more, the side kicks to the body, which these are tools that we're just not seeing used at all anymore. And it pains me. He was one of my favorite fighters forever. He still is one of my favorite fighters. He's probably, if I'm a click onto my YouTube and I want to watch a fighter interview, the two I want to watch are Robert Whitaker and Alex Volkanovski. So it pains me to say this, and I know he's not going to see this, but if he did see this, I would be praying with him to just hang up the gloves. We don't need to see anything else from you. We know that you're the second or third best middleweight of all time. He's done so much for the sport. He's done so much for Australian MMA, and I just can't watch the same downfall that I see with like a Tony Ferguson with Robert Whitaker. And I know it's not the same. He's not getting slept out cold and having zero success in his fights, but I know it's not the same guy. I can see it, like when Dustin Poirier was going into his fight with Max Holloway, I could see it wasn't the same guy. So it pains me to say it, and it pains me to see it, but Robert Whitaker's definitely made it onto the list. I promise you, if you watch his fights, if you watch him fight Vettori, watch him fight Adesanya even in the rematch, you watch him fight Yoel Romero, it's a completely different guy than now. Moving on, though, to the next guy, it's Brandon Moreno. Again, this is another one that people are going to really question why I've got this. Oh, sort of spoiled the ending there, but I'm not going to remake this for the fifth time. But Brandon Moreno, he was once known for his like slick, fast technical striking. He was really good with his jab, straight as clean combinations. And that was all in like the Figueiredo quadrilogy. Now you watch his fights, you see looping overhands, you see wide shots, you see hooks that are missing, you see so much less structure in his striking, the occasional leg kick. It's just a completely different Brandon Moreno. And before you guys say, bro, come on, Peter Yan's like 32, Robert Whitaker's like 34, and Brandon Moreno's 31. They're in their athletic prime, man. It's not true. Some of these guys, like a Max Holloway, someone who's been in the UFC since they were 20 years old, 23 years old, these guys have way more miles on their body than a guy like Yuri, who's just came into the promotion. Anyone who's just came, a Paddy Pimblett, who's been fighting in Cage Warriors, although he's had some wars, it's different to these Robert Whitakers, who's been in the division since he was 22 years old, coming up against people who are putting wars against him, coming up against Yoel Romero at 26 years old. It's a completely different thing. Brandon Moreno, I think he's been in so many wars that he just doesn't really follow up anymore. Like you see in the Usyk fight, his most recent fight, where people were saying, bro, this is Brandon Moreno of old. We're finally getting him back. It's not him. We see him hurt Usyk every round with a right hand over the top, and he just doesn't press him. He doesn't push for a finish at all in the fight. Or you watch the Brandon Royval 2 rematch, and he had a good stylistic matchup for him, but he doesn't shoot once in the entire fight. He showed the grappling advantage in their first fight. He finished Brandon Royval in their first fight. And now he's not shooting in on him in their entire 5-round fight that he's literally losing every second of. And he's just not doing it enough to win. And I almost get the sense in his own head that he's sort of got this sparring energy whilst he's fighting. You see in the Usyk fight, there's no point where he looks to finish. You see in the Royval fight where he literally doesn't look like he's stepping on the gas at all. And it just looks like he's not taking those same risks that he took during the Davison Figueiredo quadrilogy. He's way less aggressive. And all of this chopping and changing with his team, I think, has definitely played into a factor with it. Because we've seen him change teams like 3 to 4 times. In each fight, he looks worse, honestly. I think there are wrinkles of his game that are probably getting better. Maybe his defensive grappling is getting better. But the thing is that he's just a completely different style to watch now. He was repeatedly catching Usyk. I said this before. He was repeatedly catching him and didn't change up anything at all. In the Royval fight, it was anyone's fight the entire time. He didn't try to grapple. It feels like he's just not got that same grit that Brandon Moreno had as he was coming up in the division, as he didn't have his belt, as he wasn't famous and millions of dollars under the through his career. Like, it just makes... I just think he isn't the same guy. But moving on to the 3 fighters that I already spoiled, I'll make my screen a little bit smaller so you can actually see them. But we've got Jan Blachowicz, We've got Kamaru Usman. We've got Charles Oliveira. I'm not going to harp on about these three because they're a lot more obvious, and I've seen creators sort of cover this part time and time again. But Jan Blachowicz in the Olberg fight looked so stiff. He looked like he had concrete in his knees. He had super slow entries to the pocket. Very flat-footed, no head movement. And he just doesn't have the same physical specimen sort of power that he used to. He doesn't have that same speed that he used to. He was always plotty, but he would close the difference, whereas now he just doesn't have that same thing. For Kamaru Usman, he still has that amazing wrestling base, but his striking movement is not there anymore. He no longer throws any long combinations. It's just a 1-2 every single time. His punches are very slow and stiff. No looseness in the shoulders or flow at all. And his defensive reactions have dulled. If you watch the Joaquin Buckley fight, every time they're on the feet with each other, it looks like he's going to get finished. He's moving in head first, no head movement, throwing punches where he's looking at the ground. And I just can see a slightly decreased confidence with him. In that Masvidal fight, where he got the beautiful KO over Masvidal, we saw an Usman who was super confident in his strikes. We saw an Usman that wanted to be out there and he wanted to finish his opponents. Whereas now we're seeing an Usman that sort of needs to control his opponents to a victory. And he's way less confident in those chaotic exchanges. He used to embrace the pressure. Now he looks for a lot safer engagements, which as he gets on in his career is a good idea. But we're not seeing the same gritty Kamaru Usman of old. But now, moving on to the last one, it's the Charles Oliveira. You will definitely disagree with me. I've seen so many people online saying that his decline doesn't start now just because he lost. But I honestly think his decline started at the Arman Sarukian fight. Or, yeah, like around the Arman Sarukian fight or just after. Because that was the time, the Arman Sarukian fight, where I looked at Oliveira and I said, damn, you're not that fast, actually. You're not that fast on the feet. You're not that dynamic on the feet. But then I go back and rewatch his fights against Prime Poirier and Prime Gaethje, where he's outspeeding them constantly, where he's putting it on them with diverse strikes. He just seems, in that Arman fight and in that Michael Chandler fight, he's so much slower to pull the trigger. And when he does, it's not as devastating. It's not as punishing. He doesn't have that same speed with his shots. And it just lacks the snap that it once had. Like, if you watch the Gaethje fight or the Poirier fight, every shot, every knee that he landed, every right hand that he landed, every teep he landed, it seemed to just sort of deter his opponent from doing what they wanted to do. And now it's like he's so methodical that they're not really deterred from anything, apart from Michael Chandler, who is also trying to be methodical. But even the Michael Chandler fight, he looked really slow in that. Michael looked like a sitting duck on the feet. He was running away from Oliveira at times. And now Michael Chandler's able to hurt him and almost finish him in the 5th round. And it looks like in the sequence that hurt him, it looks like all he had to do was duck once. And not once was he able to do it. His head was on center line for like 6 shots in a row that Michael Chandler lands on him and eventually dropping him. I think the wars and the age have finally caught up with Oliveira. I don't necessarily think that he wouldn't have got slept out cold by that punch by Ilia Topuria. But I think he's a little bit faster beforehand. I think he survives another minute before getting slept out cold. I don't think it's much of a different result in that. But I think, at least for the Arman Sarukian fight, I think he could have won that if we're seeing the fast, prime version of Oliveira. And I know it sounds copy because he literally just lost, but I'm not a massive, I know I dare to say it, I'm not a massive Oliveira fan like everyone else. I've always thought that there were weaknesses to his games, but I think that we're seeing that a lot more now that he's not the same guy that he used to be. He used to be electrically fast, and he used to put a pace on you that you would never be able to see again. Whereas now we're not seeing that same thing. We're seeing him get tired very quickly. We're seeing him not throw the same output against an Arman Sarukian. And it's just a different fight for him nowadays. It might be a mindset change, but whatever it is, he's not the same fighter anymore. Let me know what you thought of my opinions on these guys in the comment section below. I'm sure I'm going to get a flood of dislikes because I'm going to be shitting on your favorite fighter. Deal with it. I don't really care. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. I'll catch you next time. Peace.